Hello, this is part 2 of our review of the first episode of The Second Coming. So if you haven't already, listen to last week's episode, also featuring Joe Brennan, to get caught up to speed. And let's pick up where we left off.
I wonder if, because of RTD's upset, like he loves TV, if The Second Coming happened today, it would be quite hard to deny it because people would see it on TV, and especially now, because he said a couple of weeks ago that he'd love to remake it now. Now it'd be on TikTok within 5 seconds because everyone's got a camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
And this idea that obviously 2,000 years ago...
But then there'd be like deep fakes of the event, and then people wouldn't know which one was real, and it's, yeah.
Maybe this was kind of the only period where something like this was almost undeniable proof, whereas, it happens 10, 20 years later, and suddenly you can scrutinize it.
There was a funny graph which was like the number of miracles dropping significantly once photography is invented, and then raising significantly once like Photoshop is invented.
Yeah. I think that's
But shout out,
funny thing, just somewhere in the middle.
Shout out to the first millennial saint that he got put into the canon a couple of weeks ago. That's a crazy news story.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. I think sort of some people were saying like, why are we calling him a millennial saint? He's clearly a Zoomer. It's like, no, he died in 2006 and his body has just been preserved for longer than he was alive. You can see his body if you go to Italy. Like, you can actually just do that. But yeah, he's a saint now. It's because the bureaucracy of sainthood, which the moment I said it, I was like, I love that phrase. I want to do something with it. The bureaucracy of sainthood is this whole process of like having to have 2 independently verified miracles in order to become a saint. And this saint, the millennial saint, the patron saint of gaming, one of the miracles was someone's brain surgery being successful. That was considered a miracle and not just brain surgery. Yeah. Which, I mean, good for them. I'm glad it was successful, but that's what passes as a miracle nowadays. No wonder we need a second coming.
Were they using a chisel and hammer, just for the brain surgery? Is that why it was a miracle?
I think the probability of a successful outcome was like below 50%, and so because they beat the odds, that makes it a miracle. Which, as I say, good for them, but that's just a good doctor and a bit of luck.
You get quite a few miracles every night in a casino in that case, clearly.
Whereas Steve is only on miracle number 1.
Also, I think the miracles have to happen after you're dead. I think it has to be that your spirit is doing them, not your actual self.
Right. But this is Christ. This is Steve Baxter, aka the Second Coming. We're talking about here.
Yes.
So I like the image of like someone bringing their dying baby to him. That was quite a powerful moment.
Yeah.
And him saying that's not how it works. And it almost made me think on this topic of how this could only happen in this time period, how 2,000 years ago almost make you think that the stories of people touching Jesus could just be exaggerated word of mouth stories because they're things that are so small versus something massive like this column of light. It's food for thought, I think, about the size of things and their plausibility / deniability.
And then Dave is on the news and he's claiming to be Steve's bestie, and Pete yells at TB, "You're a lying bastard," because he's This was the one thing, Joe, where I was like, yeah, I agree that this is an interesting use of Dave.
I what I felt was that it was a very relatable human kind of thing, that of course you'd have people who, same with any kind of minor celebrity or major celebrity who suddenly gains fame, you get the people from their hometown who are just instantly trying to profit from it. And I think, it's one of those things where you can think of Russell's thought process there and going, oh yeah, that would happen. I'm very good for thinking of that, and having them in the story for that reason is.
And now we get the most 2003 scene ever. Judy watches the dating service tape from Johnny, and she keeps rewinding a bit over and over again, and we're like, what's going on is what's going on here. She's able to pause it on a moment where we see the demon eyes come out, and it's this really creepy moment where the tape is flickering instead of just being paused. It's flicking between 2 frames. Some real analog horror. And then she tries to pull out the tape, And naturally, a bit of it gets like caught in a thing and it unwinds, and now the tape's destroyed. And
yeah, it's funny because like everything else has been
quick, get a pencil.
Has been like, it's not that any cameras in the stadium were fried or frazzled, and you only have eyewitness proof. Everything else has been really easy to capture on camera, and then it's the one time Judy needs proof of anything that this gets in the way, and that could just be incredibly bad luck from her part there.
It could be because this is a different force. This is not the force of God. But I've wondered about, like, if God is everything and everywhere, how is there an evil force,
Well,
but also the evil has to come from somewhere. I'm sure this has been asked a million times. I'm not saying anything.
I'm sure you're familiar with the problem of evil and the triangle, Louis.
Yeah, it must be, yeah.
As our local reverend, I'll give you a reading list at the end of the podcast.
Okay, good. One of the reading lists will just be a poster note saying, read Greek mythology instead,
I wonder what Judy is thinking at this very moment, because there must be some insane internal conflict for her right now, because her gut instinct from the very beginning was that this is a load of nonsense, what's going on. She's then seen this proof that is hard to deny, and then seen this guy with these weird eyes.
Well, later on, she says, like, maybe you're psychic, maybe it's aliens.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe it's just an alien proxy war, right? Like, there's some aliens that want to control us by making an Earth prophecy come true so that we're in an emotionally vulnerable state and they can take over. And then there's aliens that want to just fuck shit up, and that's, maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, I do think it is interesting to have this character that is willing to believe literally anything except what I guess is happening, or what Steve is saying is happening. That she's so sure that this isn't true, that she is open to the idea that it's aliens or magic or anything other than God she's happy to accept. But I think it's interesting, it's not that she conveniently is able to miss all the proof so that there's able to be this conflict and that there's able to be a non-believer. It's a case of, well, I've not seen anything that could allow me to, and it's like, everyone else has seen it. But no, she is kind of shown multiple times this kind of unexplained phenomena, and she's able to still, I guess, irrationally rationalize it.
Yes.
Yep.
So now we kind of get a setting up of like the new status quo, now that all the attention is on Steve, and we saw him in the stadium, he was like mobbed by crowds. He's basically taking refuge in this like police station, and they're like saying, oh, well, we can't like arrest you and we can't let you go because it's not safe. And obviously if we put you in a cell just to like, stay as if it's a hotel room, that would still really send the wrong message. And so he's saying that, well, he wants to go out there, he wants to like make a statement, and he's like, no, that's too dangerous. But then we have this senior police officer, we don't really know much about him, but he just sort of says, he's just there to kind of say to the other officers, go with what Steve wants, do what he says, I have my instructions. That's all we get.
Yeah.
So now the police are not really going to get in the way of Steve doing his stuff. He goes out there. He tells humanity that they become gods through advancements in specifically biology, specifically sequencing DNA and making man-made horrors beyond our comprehension, and that they need to take responsibility for all the stuff they're doing. And I think if it was today, there'd be some climate messaging. That would absolutely be like the angle if it was done today. I reckon. I say that with almost complete certainty. Like, what else would it be? Like, that's the only thing anyone ever talks about these days. I wonder why. Mm-hmm. And so he says, okay, so you got to take responsibility. You got to write and deliver the third testament. That's what the show is about now. It's about saying, hey, I need the third testament. I know I'm the second coming of Christ, but I'm not like writing the testament, you're writing it. He just says that humanity has to write it. And obviously it's like, what does that mean? We see kind of this strange, odd setup, but then wondering, how would this actually play out? How is an entire, human race going to write the third testament?
That whole sequence and having the police involved, allowing him to just speak in that sense, and the fact that he doesn't know the answers himself is another great thing, that everyone is asking him this question. He's telling them as much as he's able to tell them, but I think that's an interesting kind of we are all left wondering, how is this going to pan out? What the hell is this guy talking about? But we then have that kind of insight into how his mind works, and we know that he doesn't have the answers either.
I mean, when he gets asked how he's going to, how he'll be able to see the Third Testament, what if it gets written? How is it, even if it's written, how is it going to get to you?
Yeah.
He cries a little to just cut away from that. He just starts crying, and that's just it.
The show almost expects you to think that Steve is going to deliver the testament, but when you actually think about the two testaments that come before in the Bible, they aren't delivered by God. You think about the Gospels that tell the story of Jesus; they're written by four blokes, and they're just four guys telling you their sort of eyewitness story, and so it feels fresh for Steve to turn around to the human race and say, I want it to come from you. And it's powerful because the theme is, the message is, humanity, you've gone wrong, you need to be saved, but you need to save yourselves. But it's also got that precedent of...
No, that's really clever. I didn't think about that. No, that is
That's what's happened before, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, you're right. I of course. Why would the Third Testament be any different? Yeah.
I liked the kind of almost the attempt to add some sort of, structure and order to the situation of everyone in the world is sending their version of the testaments. And I think the whole role of the police in this show, I thought in this episode, was really fun because it's this meeting of the kind of procedure with this absolute wild card situation where no one knows how to respond, and trying to put that into some sort of kind of protocol, I thought was really fun. And I thought that was a fun angle of having the police there to kind of be like, I guess we're here at your disposal, but we're not really sure if we need to step in at any point, but we'll do what we can, but it doesn't seem to make any sense to us. I like that as an authority that has no authority anymore, really, and is just trying to fit in as best they can into a scenario that they have no place in, or no one really has much place in.
Yeah.
It's amusing to me that it's just the Greater Manchester Police.
Yeah.
And it's not sort of the nation, it's not the UK government's force, it's the local county police. And I wonder, guys, if the UK government and the other governments across the world, because they've clearly got protocols in the event of alien invasion or something, surely. As remote it must be, I wonder if there's a protocol for the second coming of Christ.
That's a good thing to think about. Who in the government is proposing that, and who is actually having to just like, oh yeah, go and write it. I don't care, And then it turns out that they have to dig up this file written by some nutter in Downing Street. That
yeah, but it was written so long ago that all technology stuff is outdated, and they're like, we just replace all the mentions of air raid sirens with social media alerts, right?
Yeah. Send a horse and cart to meet him. It's like, yeah, but this was written before cars. We have to do it. Someone find the new Jesus a horse and cart.
And we're bringing to old London town.
Yeah, I did like the idea of the BBC took him off air because he swore.
Yeah.
And just that someone at the BBC...
He said, you cheeky bastards. And then they're like, they're silencing Christ. And then he comes back on air, but it's no, it's because of broadcasting rules. Come on.
Yeah, and I think they had switched to ITV or something because the BBC cut him off. I love the idea that it's well, he may be the son of God, but we have standards to uphold here. And
no, but I did student radio, and that is basically the number one rule.
Yeah, nothing
is more important than not swearing. Okay, you could be the son of Christ, but if you're saying fuck or bugger, you can't be on air.
I wonder. This script was Nicola Schindler took this script, not the script, but the this show to the BBC, and they turned it down. So I wonder if that's a jab at the BBC, being the characters having to turn over to ITV, who were the ones to actually broadcast the show. I wonder.
It's quite meta.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were I'm lost in this. Yes, we're on the third. People are sending in their copies of the Third Testament.
Yes.
If it was, I was going to say if it were today, there'd be a hashtag.
Yeah.
But we're past that, I believe. People are still trying to...
Judy on the phone makes a good point, but she doesn't want the holy institutions to write the testament for her.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because she says this, and then we see that, but maybe she doesn't have to worry about that because it's clearly all just being sent in by random people.
Yeah.
And apparently they all have to get checked for bombs and stuff, which means there's a big warehouse of Third Testaments that... you know. And also because I think like the New Testament is like the story of Jesus Christ, but like I imagine that like what are people writing like? You'd imagine like are they just writing like 12 Rules for Life, but like their own version, you know?
Yeah, you know, because are they writing stories?
Yeah.
Like I want someone to like be writing like a story, a parable for something, but also because there were like a bunch of texts that were like decanonized. So there was this text for a long time was part of the New Testament. I think it was about like a Roman guy going about his day and then like being hit by the divine light and learning that, hey, something big is coming or whatever. And that was a bit of a spin-off prequel to like Jesus, but because it wasn't about Jesus specifically, it eventually got taken out of the canon. But for a long time, people like believed in stuff, and I'm wondering like, yeah, do people have to like write their fan fictions about Steve, or can they write their own little autobiographies and then end it with, and then I was hit by the divine light and realized that something big is coming. ... You know?
Yeah. No, I guess those are the questions that they want you to ask, and that everyone would be asking in that.
No, it's I'm having a lot of fun just chatting nonsense about what this might entail. Like, it's generally an interesting thought experiment.
Sorry, what were you about to say, Joe?
I don't think anything important.
Okay.
So clearly this isn't working, but then he has a vision of Fiona going into a convenience store with her 2 kids, and she puts all of her loose change into the like charity what are those called, the little plastic things you shake and shake?
That's what I would try and describe it as. Yeah, the little charity pot.
Collection box, I suppose.
Yeah.
This scene really hit me more than I was expecting to. So maybe, Joe, you've really got me. I shouldn't have said earlier in the podcast that this character wasn't important, because actually every time...
I'm just sitting back really smug as you find more reasons to like these 2 characters.
I think, again, and this was the second thing I thought about how strangely relevant this episode felt, was today with a lot of some really, really awful conflicts happening across the globe, and how we're quite detached in the UK, and this idea of we go about our days asking ourselves, what is it to be a good person in a country away from a lot of these conflicts right now, and what's the right thing to do, and should I be emptying my wallet every time I see someone asking for money, and the fact that I haven't been doing that, am I actually a terrible person? I really felt something inside watching this little moment, because clearly the whole planet is having a crisis of morality, as Steve's return has confirmed the existence of heaven and hell.
Yeah. I liked how it kind of started as, I'll put some money in there, and then it just kind of becomes this almost manic sense of, I've got to empty my wallet here and to do as much as I can for this. And just a really nice little kind of individual moment there.
It reminded me of The Good Place. Have either of you seen?
Oh yes, the guy that spends every waking moment trying to get into the good place. Because what's the point in indulging in a bit of pleasure for even one time if, you know, what's counting on your time on Earth is an eternity of pleasure or an eternity of torture?
The idea that there's a point system that The Good Place uses in its own theology, and then it proposes an idea in one of the later seasons, so spoilers, that it's actually impossible to do an action in the 21st century that will give you positive points towards the afterlife, because the world is so corrupt and awful that every single action...
Yes, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Yes, there we go. That's a smarter way of saying what I was trying to say.
Well, no, it's just the meme of like, oh, right, the show came to that conclusion, because it's a bit of a mantra, you know, it's a thing people say. And then, of course, the classic meme of it is eating ass is the only ethical consumption under capitalism.
It was kind of around this point in the show that I was feeling that almost I wish there was more of it. That, you know, if this kind of the ideas that we're toying with in tiny little moments, maybe it's great that they are kept pure and in this kind of alluded to state. But, you know, there's feels like there's so much juice here. There's so much kind of quality storytelling going on and quality ideas at play that you could pick any of these apart for a bigger episode. But maybe the fact that they don't is what keeps it so not pure but kind of impactful in a very short burst. Not that it's a short episode, but yeah.
I wonder what people, because sort of looking at television reviews in recent weeks, how people aren't responding well to episodes of television trying to tackle a lot of things at once and thinking that's not successful. And I hate to say it, I'm thinking of a very particular episode of Doctor Who here in the reviews that came up about it. So I wonder if what you're suggesting would have made for a better series of television.
Again, it probably depends. If they were to expand it and make it good, it would be really good. But then if they were to water everything down by spending too much time on it, then that'd probably be bad. So,
yeah, exactly. The next vision that Steve has is quite different in terms of I didn't quite start to feel the same weird emotions and themes coming across, but of Pete walking through a graveyard with flowers, and oh my gosh, I've never seen a graveyard so well, apart from at a funeral, but a funeral-less graveyard just full of people.
Yeah, a lot of people there. I think it's a nice bit of world building that in this moment of the Son of God coming back, a lot of people are convening with the dead, and I like that it's not just Pete, it's kind of everyone.
But it's more than that, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, people are like crying, you hear.
And there's a guy who's literally leaning on this gravestone, banging it. It's very emotionally...
There's always someone. Actually, there's a bit where in the big speech, Steve asks who thinks they've got it all sorted out, and one person puts their hand up and he's like, oh yeah, there's always someone.
Is there?
I wonder if this moment has something to do with that revelation that heaven and hell are real and hell is full and heaven's empty. And this idea of people going to their dead and they've spend their lives consoling themselves about how so-and-so is in a better place, how mummy's upstairs now. And actually no.
Oh no. She was very nice to me, but she's downstairs. I liked her. She was very kind to me, but she did a lot of bad stuff.
She did a lot of consumption under capitalism, which, as we know, is unethical.
So we've got these two visions of two of Steve's friends. And I don't know if this was, again, I say this as someone who's purposely trying to get that authentic experience of having not seen the second part. Is this a hint that the third testament is going to come from them?
I think it is because after this, he comes up with a plan.
Yes.
That's very much, I think very much the point is that, like, he'll just get his mates to write it. He'll just get his 4 disciples to write it, or 3. If we don't count Dave, I don't know.
That's 3.
Yeah, no, but it definitely, the way it goes from who's going to write it, how are we going to do that, and then it cuts to the scene in the shop. That very much to me felt the implication was that the information that needed to be in it was held within these people that we've been now seeing,
who represent real people.
Yeah,
I think it's important that Fiona's with her kids, like she's a mother, and that's part of her identity as an everyday person.
Yeah.
So, but Steve has 3 friends. So we've seen a vision of Pete. We've seen a vision of Fiona. It's not a vision, but the script does take us to see Judy this time, and she's picked up that map. The crazy woman in the car demon.
The crazy woman in the car handed Judy a map to look at, and then drove off without the map, and then she dropped on the ground. But a couple days later, it's still there, so she's able to pick it up.
I think that was the most unbelievable thing in this show for me.
I thought, that's supposed to be weird.
Okay.
That's supposed to be...
Yeah, that was kind of the angle I was seeing, was that's kind of...
completely aside.
But also, to me, even Judy going there speaks to an element of belief from her. Judy going, I'm going to go back to that place, pick up that map and go to the location on it. It speaks to this kind of, she knows something is going on, and she's almost looking for ways to, be talked out of it, or finding rationalizations, even if it means, doing something ridiculous to find them. That's all very interesting.
She puts the staunch in staunch atheist.
Which is, I think it's a clever move then to take it to a university, place of higher learning, place of rationalization, for her to meet, we never quite, this woman that she meets, we never quite at this point dive into who she is, but clearly she's an academic.
No,
because obviously the mad woman is not going to be there, the husband's not going to be there because he's dead, so it's just being led to this place. She's just like, I just think I was kind of led here at this time, and I don't really know what's going on, and so she was kind of supposed to meet this woman who would sort of be like, oh yes, 9 out of 10 scientists agree that God exists now.
Yeah, it's almost turning to what you would maybe expect to be the one institution that would go, hang on, don't worry, we'll sort this out. We can explain it all away with mirrors and.
Because she does manage to explain what's happened. She's like, okay, so like we ran the instruments, we looked at footage, we did all of this sort of stuff to figure out what the deal was. How was it daytime? Well, the daytime was from Tuesday specifically. It was a little circle of Tuesday in Thursday night, and that reminded me of a joke about a rabbi who sees some money on the ground, but it's Saturday, so he can't pick it up, and so he prays to God, and then around him it becomes Tuesday. The idea is there's some sort of time travel thing, and it's like, well, there you go, there's the science. And then she's like, well, no, how the hell would that happen without God?
Yeah, it's a good subversion there, because you almost think, you're like, oh, hang on, is this all unraveling? It's like, no, not really, unless it's even more, it almost makes it more incredible,
Because even Judy, she voices she thought she was going to come and have the whole thing disproven, but instead the rationalization just made it more believable.
Yeah.
And you think that would be because the discussion we had before where and it's around this point in the show where she says it, she'd be happy if it was aliens, if it was this, that, or the other. But the fact that it's religion, which is the ultimate irrationality, she can't buy into it.
Yeah.
But it's when someone says, well, here's a rational explanation for this, she's still really, I think, thrown into, oh my God, she's all over the place because she still doesn't quite want to believe.
But it's funny, when she mentions aliens, I just thought, well, I watched Three Body Problem recently and she could be onto something. Those were some powerful aliens.
I haven't seen Three Body Problem yet, so I'm going to laugh.
Don't worry, that's really not a spoiler. It's pretty obviously about aliens, don't worry. It's sort of...
Okay. We're getting closer to the end, so we'll try and rattle through and get to the juicy bits. But we find out that Francis, that's Steve's dad, is in fact infertile.
Yeah, so a little earlier he did like a blood sample and did like a semen sample. It's funny, but the shot where he's walking into the bathroom to do the semen sample is all shot from above, like God's eye view, because you see the camera go over the wall, and like he just opens a folder and inside is like a single magazine, and he just kind of shuts it. It's like, I don't know. But yeah, he finds out on the news that he's infertile. They told the news before they told him. And we're like, oh my God, this is completely not the hippopotamus oath. Really unprofessional. But the police officer who's with Francis has those demon eyes. So you kind of figure out that, oh, right, okay, this is some meddling. This is someone being annoying to sort of make him angry or something.
It's only 2003. The NHS isn't in that much of a state just yet.
No, yeah.
I thought it was interesting to get that from the dad, because once you find out he's the son of God, it's like, to what degree is he the son of God? Is that just he's a normal fella who was born from normal parents and then gained the kind of godly knowledge and godly awareness, or is this I think with the fact we've followed his father kind of every now and then throughout the episode, it is quite an interesting way of keeping him around so that we can then get this reveal that means something to the characters involved, No,
yeah, because it's obviously it has religious significance, but also him seeing it on the TV, that must be devastating to see that on the TV.
Yeah, and we kind of see earlier it's almost the inverse, because he's getting this TV attention. They're bringing up his old criminal convictions, and he's kind of enjoying that. He's enjoying that all being read out, and then him being a subject of speculation is... He's
enjoying being a bit of a Dave Courtney character,
Yeah, and I think the fact that he's then, the inverse of that is him watching the TV. He's the subject of the news story, but that's something that he really does not want to hear from the news story first. I think that's fun.
Absolutely. On the note of TV, Johnny comes up. We're not finished with Mr. Johnny Tyler. Steve now encounters Johnny for the first time through watching the telly, and Johnny phones into this phone-in show.
Yeah.
And says, "Oh yes, I 100%. I'm down. I'm behind this man as the new Christ. So we're all ready for the coming war."
Yes, and I was like, wow, This guy's been reading a little too much Neil Gaiman, but, good for him.
An interesting kind of surprise of, usually, if people are getting behind our main character, it's like, oh, that's good. Good that, there's not enemies around. But then it's like, oh, maybe actually we don't want this guy and this idea to be associated with our fella, It's a shocking kind of, I mean, we already don't really like Johnny, but to get that in a more kind of, troubling sense and not just an annoyance,
And I think Steve's been fighting so much to be a figure that unites humanity. And then instead we're talking about, now we've got a mention of war, just to absolutely tear people apart.
But, this forces him to come up with a plan. So, maybe the devil isn't winning just yet. So Steve comes up with a plan. He's had his visions. He's seen what's at stake with this holy war. And so he calls the barman at the pub from, actually the pub where Judy met Johnny turns out to also be like a pub he's a local at. So he calls the barman and is like, I need you to do me a favour. And barman's like, you've got 19 quid. You owe 19 quid on your tab. Pay that off and I'll do it. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Which is another lovely bit of, he's a common old bloke man, down the pub man, but of course he's also the son of Christ. And so he escapes the police station, and they don't go after him because of that higher up who says, let him cook, basically. There's the let him cook guy. We see him emerging from the back of a little lorry, so I imagine that's how he sort of got that far. But for the last bit, he does walk along the street, and people kind of look out their window, and they'll be like, oh my god, it's him, it's the guy. Ooh, I think, does Johnny see him at this point as well?
Yes? I'm not sure.
But anyway, he makes it to the pub, and we sort of see like a cast of characters there. We've got his dad, we've got some random people, and we've got his 3 disciples, Actually, no, Dave is there, so his 4 disciples. Yeah, when he enters the pub, the first person he's sort of confronted by is a guy who takes off a jumper to reveal a big shirt with the word queer on it.
And the pink triangle, don't forget the pink triangle.
And the pink triangle, yes. Yes, of course. And he mentions that the anti-gay stuff is from one Old Testament book that Jesus actually threw out, so it should be fine. And Steve is like, yeah, I'm fine with it. And like, I get why he's being defensive, I completely get it, but also Steve is like really trying to say, hey, I'm about humanity writing this testament. I don't have any problem with the queer. No, he doesn't say I don't have a problem with queers. He just says I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it.
I was in two minds about this scene because there's a large part of me that really wants a religious figure to turn around and say, "Oh yeah, you're absolutely beautiful. I love queer people." And he doesn't say that, which my stomach drops. But I think it's more meaningful that he turns it around and says, the hate, and what he means is, all the hate, it actually comes from humanity, and the love has to come from humanity, to say that modern religion, that in hating queer people, is not religion, it's homophobia using religious language as a vehicle.
And he says, like, you're writing it, and so he says, well, then I declare it to be fine. It's good. He gives him autonomy. He's kind of rejecting this idea of authority that he kind of inherits.
Yeah. No, I thought that was an interesting moment as well, that you almost did expect him to say, yes, it's fine, it's wonderful, I love gay people, and I think it's all good, and, in my next version of the Testament, but he is very much putting the pressure on humanity to if that is something that is important to get right, it's up to humans to get that right, as it has always been, really. And I thought that was an interesting subversion of maybe what you expect from a modern Christ figure to be coming out with.
Yes.
Because as we mentioned before, all the previous testaments were written by people, so it was people that wrote. It was a man who wrote "Man should not lie with man."
Yeah, exactly.
Goosebumps right there. Whew.
Yeah.
This is better than therapy.
And it's like, well, yeah, maybe you can't, but some of us are a bit luckier in love, so, why don't you sit the fuck down?
After Steve has resolved this, he turns to his friends and says, he's like Nick Fury being like, I'm putting together a team. and he says, I want to recruit the 3 of you. I want you by my side. I'm going to have to go here, there, and everywhere. I'm going to be going to London, Washington, Rome.
Yeah.
And it's Pete that says, no, fuck London.
Yeah, get them to come here.
To Manchester. And the mank inside of me makes me wish that Russell T Davies had written a character in Doctor Who that had said, "Oh, why is everything happening in London? Let's set more in Manchester."
Yeah, we want more alien invasions where we live, you know.
I guess at that point he must have been living in South Wales, because that was his secondary location instead of.
True. It's true.
No, it is wild. Like the first time New Who was set in Manchester was
the Eve of the Daleks.
Yeah, Eve of the Daleks, and it was just like a warehouse, which is like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I'm sure you filmed this in Manchester. I'm sure you did that. Yeah. Yeah, we have a bit of information about these characters that's been revealed just before we go on. So Pete is a devout Christian. He says he's always kind of been a devout Christian. His mum was, I think. So the idea is Pete is very much a believer, and then Judy is very much not a believer. And even like, she also doesn't consider herself to be important enough to be convinced. Like with the university, she was like, why would I be led here to believe? If this was all real, why would I be the one who needs to believe?
And I'm looking at Joe again here and bowing my head, and me being terribly wrong about Fiona. Is Fiona supposed to be the middle ground there between the believer and the non-believer?
It's an interesting kind of I think human element there, where you've got someone, and this is, I think, potentially a theme of a lot of things within this show, is that you've got someone who, I guess, if they had the choice between right and wrong, would choose right, but is being held back by the day-to-day struggles of existence and life and childcare and all this.
Yeah.
And it's, I was then thinking about how, you know, you've got Steve asking who's going to write this, you know, who can do this. You cut to Fiona, but she's not writing, she's not thinking about it. She is having to deal with the kind of everyday struggle of existence. And I think that's a very interesting thing that I think it's something that I've felt a lot over the last few years, is that we are all so worn down by the kind of, you know, day-to-day existence of capitalism, and there's always a thing that's bombarding us, that can then get in the way of something that should be the most important thing in the world ever, whether that's climate or any kind of injustice. It's this thing that, like, realistically, all of us would, maybe most people would have the right opinions about it, but it's then who has the ability to do things about that? It's the people with time on their hands, and it's the people with money to spare, and you're not then getting the voice of the people coming through. And I think all of that was in my mind, just with the idea of this person being like, yeah, I fully believe you're the son of God, and you know, I'm with you in spirit, but realistically, who has the time to go on a crusade to kind of save the world?
I think she ticks Christian on the census and then just doesn't really go to church. I imagine she's one of those. Yeah.
I bow my head in apology for ever suggesting that Fiona was not an important character. I see it now. I see and actually I think we've answered our question as, why are there three friends? Well, they're a triad. They represent...
And Dave.
Three friends and Dave.
A spectrum of belief.
Three friends and Dave, because we need the whole gospel thing going, but, you know, we don't have enough time to develop.
Spouses don't, but plus what, spouse, they don't count.
Yeah. So Pete is worried for Steve, so he fully believes, but he's like, yeah, but didn't Jesus die?
Yeah.
Didn't that happen? And then while they're having their pints in the pub, because it's funny that, like, they're still having a pint, because it's like, we know that we're here to do the Nick Fury of Jesus, you know, but we do need to have a pint. And so Steve also reveals that he's a virgin. So we're sort of getting all these things where, like, okay, so there's all these parallels with the Jesus story, but, like, how is it going to end now? We're starting to look ahead, and we're starting to kind of set up what the most likely kind of prophecy is for the next episode. And so now this idea has been planted that, okay, so, like, you know, he's gonna need to die at some point. He's going to need to die. Like, Jesus was able to preach a bit before he got killed, but, like, how long is Steve going to be able to do his stuff for?
Well, but
he's already instituted this, like, 5-day countdown, and they say, like, we've got 3 days left now. And it's like,
yeah. And I also think that on the way to the pub, you see there is some conflict there, in that it's not just everyone is praising him. You get a few people shouting slightly meaner things towards him, and it's this sudden sense of, well, maybe this, you know, global attention is also a danger in itself. So I think that's almost laying very early groundwork for the idea that he may have enemies, and that this may not end well for him as a consequence.
Yes, got a lot of people who are trying to drain him of his energies. So he invites all the people to join him and, you know, be Team Jesus, team second coming of God, because technically Steve isn't Jesus. Jesus isn't part of this. It's team Steve, the Steve squad.
And in fact, Judy does ask if we should call him Jesus, which I think it was an idea that popped in my head while watching, going, oh my God, is he Jesus?
Yeah. Are you Jesus? Are your pronouns the same, or have you changed those? Yeah.
No, he's Steve.
But she doesn't want to come with him because she still doesn't believe in God. This is where she says, maybe you're psychic, maybe it's aliens. You know what? Good for her. I don't fault her for that. It's because, I mean, imagine if like a bunch of supernatural stuff happened with your friend. Like nowadays you would think aliens, you know?
And certainly the demographic in this room would.
Yeah, the bunch of fucking nerds in front of these microphones.
But no, I think then we get the final straw in this scene, and I apologise if it feels like I'm racing towards the end, but we see this weird guy in the corner, and there's lots of close-ups of him zipping up his jacket. He's got this briefcase that he puts down.
Yes, he's watching him with demon eyes. Ooh, it's funny. I thought that he was sort of looking at the friends more than Steve himself. So I was wondering if he was like, I need to corrupt these people. I need to bring them to the dark side. But actually, he has a much more straightforward plan. He just needs to do a little bit of domestic terrorism. That's all. It's not as drawn out as like corrupting someone's souls. It's just a nice, simple bomb. Actually, before we get to the bomb, I have to bring this up. I have to say this. Pete asked Steve if he could visit his autistic niece and, to quote him, make her better. I was wondering, Steve better fucking say there's nothing to cure. That better be what Steve says at this point. That better be the next line that comes out of Steve's little fucking mouth. But actually what he says is that it's more of a slippery slope argument, because if you cured someone of, like, you know, being in a wheelchair or of being terminally ill or whatever, then what would happen next? Would you cure people of wanting to steal shit? Would you cure people of being mean? Where would it stop? And then would you get rid of free will? And I was like, that's great, but could you just say the niece is in a wheelchair? Could she just be in a wheelchair and then it doesn't have to make me feel weird?
It's kind of the same. It's both instances of like, he's handed on an opportunity to say the right thing on two different topics, and he says something that's kind of like, yeah, you're right, but yeah. Like
a friend of mine was in a wheelchair for a little while, and then when he stopped being in a wheelchair, he was like, good, you know, I know that if someone's been in a wheelchair all their life, then it will be different, and they do go into this in years and years, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of nicer things to say about that scene, but it is just like, I know, let's stop talking about wheelchairs and autism.
So, am I right in saying, Joe, that you haven't seen Years and Years?
I haven't seen Years and Years. I know, it's a major blind spot for me.
This is very small. They just talk about like genetic engineering and stuff, and like using that to sort of cure spina bifida in utero.
Yeah,
and a character with spina bifida has some objections to this, and it's done better because more people would consider it, oh yeah, that's definitely something to cure. But then she's like, well, actually, no, should we run so fast into just curing all these things? Is that really the way we should go? And like, it's nice. The question is posed more. The question is actually posed, I should say. Here, I was hoping the question would be posed and that it would sort of be challenged, but actually, no. He just makes some wishy-washy centrist slippery slope argument about people wanting to steal stuff, you know.
And I think we can almost not quite forgive, but forgive 2000.
We can forget. We're not going to forgive this, but we can move past it because it's not a big moment. It is quite a small. It's like 2 sentences, and then the pub explodes.
Yeah, it's quite well upstaged, isn't it? So if you have it on your mind, it's taken off quite quickly.
In Steve's little like speech here, he says, you know, so I don't want to like do this because where does it stop? So, you know, I did the right thing, but now no more miracles. And then the pub explodes and we see from outside the big fireball. And then it turns out that everyone in the pub is unharmed, you know, the people at the table, also the people of the bar. So like no one is hurt. And then he says, okay, maybe 2.
That's just such a great bit. That is,
yes.
It felt almost like, and this is so Doctor Who brained and it's so everything, but it reminded me of like a Stephen Moffat, like even like an 11th Doctor line, like even more so than like a Russell T Davies Doctor Who bit, but
yes.
just like oh yeah, you well done, you've done well there, you know you've done well. we can all pat you on the back. It's okay that you're patting yourself on the back. It's
well, that just happened.
Yeah, it's
they explode now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the best version of that kind of thing. Yeah. No, I thought that was really strong.
And then we get the most dramatic Next Time trailer I've ever seen in my life.
But that's a discussion.
Everything is getting smashed to pieces in this Next Time trailer. It's just windows, doors. It's like what happens when the day after tomorrow when the time is up. It's like death, and it's like and it's like but we'll get to that.
That's a discussion for Zach and Louis to discuss in the next episode. Now, I wonder if you had a chance at the end, all of that, Joe, to sort of. Is there anything we haven't discussed that I think you want to like get your teeth into?
Yeah,
I guess
dive into why.
Kind of. What was running through the whole thing to me was this sense of Russell T Davies was clearly looking at this the best person to do Doctor Who, because it is this incredible feat of taking something that is unknowable, unfathomable, this kind of Son of God reality that exists for Steve, and making it so relatably human. And taking something, I mean, this is something that runs through his eras of Doctor Who so well, is that you take something that is so real and you put it in a fantastical scenario or a kind of science fiction scenario, and it makes the fantasy of it so much more tangible and so much more like something you can grab and enjoy and relate to, I suppose. Again, so not only is that Russell makes him the best candidate for Doctor Who, but inverting that, it makes him the best candidate for a story about Jesus, a story about Christ, a story about the Second Coming, because that's the whole thing. It's taking this unknowable, this incredible, all-powerful, all-knowing, and making it human, and actually investigating and unpacking what it means to make that human. And it's not just God but man, it is God but a man, a human man with human opinions and habits and a human being, and that doesn't go away because he's got this God power. And I think the idea of like, I wonder what Jesus was like when he was a teenager, when he was having these human relationships that we don't necessarily see spoken about quite as much, but the day-to-day existence of that, I think, Russell, he's such a perfect meeting of those two things in a way that a story about the Son of God absolutely needs to be.
Yeah.
So that was just all the way through, just like, I mean, what a great thing to exist. And, the Doctor Who of it all was something that I was unable to not think about. But I think even taking that apart, just knowing that that's something Russell's good at, and then applying that to a story that realistically should be annoying. I think you do a story of a modern Son of God, and I think there's so many ways that can go wrong, but at every step here, it almost feels like good decisions have been made to keep it focused on it's God as a human man.
With an omnipotent being committing like a self-sacrifice, can that mean anything if they're powerful enough to not like feel pain or whatever? You know what I mean? Jesus kind of has to be human for the sacrifice to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so Steve has to be human, firstly, for there to be conflict in the TV show, for instance, not be straightforward. I have God's plan. Let's go. Here's my step-by-step process for saving humanity. Okay, cool. I was all powerful, so I didn't have any problem carrying it out. No, it's like
it's one of those things that our idea of Jesus is kind of wrapped up in this. Like 2,000 years ago is a kind of unknowable time. Like we can't imagine what a day-to-day existence was.
Well, Zach can because he did classics.
Almost like the storytelling, treating it as a story, the storytelling value of having Jesus be a human man is almost lost because our understanding of Jesus is so much just, he's one of the only men we know from that time in this much detail. So making him kind of very relatably modern and human, and, he's human in all that means in the 21st century, I think as a story device really elevates what's being done here.
Would you want to see it remade by Russell T Davies, given the comment he made about a month ago?
I don't really know. Yes, I think. I mean, having just seen the first part, I don't know that it needs to be, because, I don't see necessarily where this loses oomph 20 years on.
Maybe if someone else remade it.
Yeah, I think if someone else took the idea and did something with it, there'd be so much potential in that. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in watching the second part, and I'm interested in if he were to remake it, if that's something that he was kind of serious about, and he'd been thinking in all the years since all the things that he wished he'd done or that he would do if he could do it now, then absolutely.
Fantastic.
My last note, just quickly, was that just looking forward to the next episode. Because I had this idea of, like, is the guy looking at his friends and, like, wanting to corrupt them? Turns out, no, he just wanted to let a bomb off. That got me thinking. I thought, would Judy be incorruptible? Because if she doesn't believe in God, then she doesn't believe in sort of Satan. And so just, I can't think off the top of my head how you do it now, but, like, if there was something about sort of her acting from actually quite like an instilled sort of sense of morality that she's sort of built up within herself. And because she doesn't have faith, her faith couldn't be destroyed and lead her to darkness. And if they did something with that, and if that was sort of part of but I don't know. We'll see how it goes next episode. I hope that, like, the assumptions you might make about, like, oh yes, the character who isn't a believer, I hope that, like, some of those are subverted or played with in an interesting way.
Amazing. Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this. What has ended up being a feature-length special episode of the Davis on Davis podcast.
I might split this into 2 parts and release them a week apart, you know.
A very, very, very massive thank you to Joe Brennan for joining us for the past couple of hours.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for accidentally coming on 2 episodes.
Yeah, well, no, it's good. You know, I can have my feature make it feel like a bigger deal. You know, I'm a multi-part special guest.
Where can people find you, Joe?
Search Joe Brennan on YouTube. I think at the moment I'm called Untitled Joe Brennan Movie on Twitter. Joe_Brennan_. Yeah, I mean, just my YouTube stuff is the stuff I really want people to see.
We want you to see it too. It's really good.
If you dig into my Facebook past, it's you'll find some old Doctor Who memes there. But yeah, YouTube is probably the best place to.
You review Doctor Who, but you also review other stuff.
Yeah, I talk about things. I talk about things that are on my mind. Which it's nice when Doctor Who's out because I get 7 weeks in a row of not having to think about anything else, and just I don't have to come up with video ideas. I just go, I'll do the next episode. But yeah, no, I'm having a really good time with that.
Yeah, we're having a fun time watching it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for coming, Joe.
Now, you can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me on Instagram at Louis on Air. Twitter, Louis on the Air. Zach, do you have anything to plug?
See above, Joe Brennan. I'm going to plug Joe Brennan to this week.
Good stuff.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next week for the second part.
Yes,
with a completely different special guest.
Oh, good. We're revealing that. We're teasing that. That's all confirmed. Yeah.
The teaser complete, and we're going a completely different direction with a different special guest.
Yes.
All right. Cheerio.
Great. Bye.
Bye.